Chapter 22. The Army of the Red Goblins. One day Mother said that she would be out for the whole day, and if the children liked they could have old Saucepan Man to tea and any other two friends that they had made. Good, said Joe, we'll ask Moonface and Silky. Bessie wrote a note and gave it to the little white goat to take to Moonface. The white goat was a wonderful creature. It gave the most delicious milk, it ran errands, and if any of the hens got out, it would find them and drive them back home. It was most useful. The goat took the note in its mouth and ran off to the enchanted wood. It came to the faraway tree and bleated to the red squirrel, who peeped out from the hole low down on the trunk. The squirrel took the note and bounded up to Moonface with it. Moonface was delighted and shouted down to Silky, who came up to read it. We'll ask the old Saucepan Man as soon as Mr. What's-his-name is asleep, said Moonface. The children haven't asked Mr. What's-his-name, so Saucepan will have to creep down the tree with us without telling him. They sent a note back by the little goat saying that they would arrive at 3 o'clock that afternoon. The children were excited. Mother had gone by that time, and the girls began to make the cottage look pretty with jars of flowers. Bessie baked some chocolate cookies. No, she didn't. She baked They sent the note back by the little goat, saying they would arrive at 3 o'clock that afternoon. The children were excited. Mother had gone by that time, and the girls began to make the cottage look pretty with jars of flowers. Bessie baked some chocolate cakes, and Fanny made some toffee. Joe cut bread and butter. We'll have a fine tea, he said. I hope the Saucepan Man won't be too deaf this afternoon. By 3 o'clock everything was ready. The children were neat and clean. The table looked fine, with its bread and butter, cakes and toffee. Bessie went to the gate to look for the visitors. She couldn't see them coming down the lane. They are late, she called to the others. I expect the Saucepan Man has got tangled up with his saucepans or something. 3:30 came, and no visitors. The children were rather disappointed. Perhaps Moonface read my letter wrongly and thought it was 4 o'clock, said Bessie. But when 4 o'clock came, and still no Moonface, Silky, or the Saucepan Man had arrived, they got really worried. I do hope nothing's happened, said Bessie, feeling upset. There's all our nice tea and nobody to eat it. We'll wait a bit longer, then we'll eat our share, said Joe. So, when 5 o'clock came and nobody had arrived, the children sadly ate half the tea themselves. Something's happened, said Joe gloomily. Oh dear, what do you think it is, said Bessie, alarmed. Could we go and see? No, said Joe, not now. Anyway, Mother will be back soon. We'd better go tonight. The rope will be let down the tree, so then we can pull ourselves up by it, and it won't take half as long to climb up. We really must find out what's wrong, said Bessie, clearing away. We'll take their share of the tea with us. So, that night, when it was quite dark, the 3 children slipped out of bed, dressed and crept out of the back door. They had to take a lantern, for there was no moon that night, so Joe swung it in front of him, and they could see where they were to tread. Down the dark lane they went, over the ditch and into the enchanted wood. The trees were whispering very loudly together tonight. Wish, 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 they said. Oh, how I wish I knew what they were saying, said Fanny. Come on, said Joe, we'd better not be too long. "Come on," said Joe. "We'd better not be too long, Fanny. We want to be back by daylight." They made their way through the dark wood, and there was no moon there, were no fairy folk. They made their way through the dark wood, as there was no moon there that night, and no fairy folk were about at all. The children soon came to the faraway tree, and looked for the rope, but there was no rope at all this time, and they had to begin to climb up as usual, holding on to the bough carefully, for it was very difficult to see. Before they had got further than 2 branches up, a strange thing happened. Someone caught hold of Joe's shoulder and pushed him roughly down. Joe fell, caught hold of the lowest branch, and just saved himself in time. "Who did that?" he cried angrily. He undid his lantern from his belt, where he had put it whilst climbing, and flashed it up in the tree, calling to Bessie and Fanny to go no further. And standing grinning on the lowest branch of the tree, 4 red goblins with pointed ears, wide mouths, and wicked little eyes. "No one is allowed to come up this tree now," said one of the goblins. "And no one is allowed to come down either." "But why not?" asked Joe, astonished. "Because it's our tree now." "Your tree? What nonsense," said Joe. "We've come to see our friends who live in the tree. Let us pass." "No," said the goblins, and they grinned wildly. "You can't come up." "It's no good," said a tiny voice beside Joe. "The goblins have taken everyone prisoner in the tree, and if you go up, they'll only push you down, or they'll take you prisoner too." Joe flashed his lantern downwards, and the children saw that there was a little red squirrel speaking. The one who had looked after the cushions for Moonface. "Hello," said Joe. "Do tell me what happened. I can't understand it." "Oh, it's easy enough to understand," said the squirrel. "The land of the red goblins came to the top of the faraway tree. The goblins found a hole that led down through the cloud, and poured down it. They took everyone prisoner. Moonface and everyone else are locked up in their houses in the tree trunk. I can tell you Mr. What's-his-name and the angry pixie have nearly battered their doors down in rage." "But why have the goblins locked them up?" asked Bessie in surprise. "Well, they want some magic spells that the tree dwellers know," said the squirrel. "They are going to keep them all locked up till they tell us the spells. Isn't that dreadful?" "Oh dear," said Fanny. "Whatever can we do to help them?" "I don't know," said the squirrel sadly. "If only you could get up to them, you might be able to make some plan, but the goblins won't let anyone up the tree." "Wish, wish, wish, wish," whispered the trees loudly. "You know, I can't help feeling that the trees want to tell us something tonight," said Bessie. "Suddenly, I always feel that way when they are whispering secrets to one another, but tonight I feel that they are wanting to tell me something." "I shouldn't be surprised," said the squirrel. "The faraway tree is king of the wood, and now the trouble has come to it, all the other trees are angry. Perhaps they want to help us." "Wish, wish, 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 wish," said the trees loudly. "Put your arms around the tree trunk and press your left ear to the tree," said the squirrel suddenly. "I have heard it is said that it is the only way to hear the tree's words." Each of the children found a small tree. They put their arms around the trunk and pressed their left ears to the tree, and then they could quite clearly hear what the trees were whispering. help the faraway tree dwellers. The leaves whispered, help them. But how can we? Whispered back the children eagerly. Tell us. Go up the slippery slip, said the trees in their leafy voices. Go through the trapdoor and up the slippery slip. Oh, cried all the children at once. Of course! Why ever didn't I think of that ourselves? Shh, said the squirrel in alarm. Don't let the goblins hear you. What did the trees say? They said we should go through the trapdoor and go up the slippery slip, said Joe, in a low voice. We can get right up to Moonface, and then it's a wonderful idea. Come on then, said Bessie, and then the three of them ran to the faraway tree and felt about for the little trapdoor. Oh, another adventure!